Greetings from Kenwell. Today is Sunday, July 2nd, 2023. Today I want to talk to you about a documented miracle that happened in my life. It all started back in the year 2005 when I noticed there was this weird growth on the right-hand side of my tongue. Finally, it got so bad that I went to the doctor, and the doctor sent me off to get a biopsy. When the biopsy came back, it was negative, but just in case, Dr. Nash sent me to a specialist whose name was Dr. Stan Jackson. My appointment was on Tuesday, May 24th. On that morning of the appointment, Darlene couldn't join me because what had happened, her mother had just died, and the minister, Stan Grummett, was over at our place, and they were planning the funeral that was going to happen on that Saturday. As I went to the appointment, I knew that it was only precautionary since the biopsy came back negative. Dr. Jackson looks at my tongue and immediately says, "Yep, that is definitely cancer." I then began to argue with him saying, "But the biopsy came back negative." Dr. Jackson said there are lots of times that biopsies, they miss the mark, but he said this is definitely cancer. And immediately he schedules me in for surgery in June. I will always remember walking back to my car after this appointment. As I was walking along on the sidewalk, all of a sudden I started crying. I had all sorts of tears coming down my face. I just couldn't believe that I had cancer. Well, I had my composure back by the time I saw Darlene, and as a very loving wife, she was very compassionate and sympathetic toward me and gave me great comfort. It was funny, that evening, a friend of mine, whose name is also Ken, called me up on the phone. He knew that I had this doctor's appointment and he wanted to know how it went. Almost as soon as I got on the phone, I started crying once again. I can't believe I did this because normally I'm not much of a crier. And as I said, oh, did the tears flow down my face. My friend Ken was supportive, and once again, I got my composure back by the time we ended the phone call. That following week, I was in Toronto on one of my business trips, and I told a number of my jeweler friends about my tongue cancer. One woman said this to me, and I quote, "Ken, I had a good friend of mine who had tongue cancer, and they died." I looked at her, and in my mind, I thought, do you have any common sense whatsoever for what comes out of your mouth? Talk about good words of encouragement for someone who is just about to have surgery. Now, Darlene and I had been training for the Manitoba Marathon on June 19th, which was one day before my surgery. We decided that we would definitely go through with the marathon. It turned out to be one of the worst marathons we have ever run. It was stinking hot that day, and by the halfway point, it was 104 degrees Fahrenheit with direct sunlight. At the halfway point, I was going to quit. Darlene was just a short distance behind me, and when I saw her, I told her I was going to quit. But as a loving wife, she said, "Ken, who cares about what time we do? Let's just complete it and have some fun along the way." Well, we did a lot of walking and did indeed some very slow running, but we kept plugging along. All throughout the second half, all we could hear was ambulances coming to pick up runners who needed help. The heat was so overwhelming that people were dropping off like flies. Anyways, the last 400 meters of the race were on the university track. As soon as Dar and I arrived on the track, we stopped. We took off our water belts. We fixed our hair and we ran across the finish line together with our hands held up in the air. And as you look at the picture I have included, I think you will agree that it is indeed a great picture. Well, the surgery. On Monday, June 20th, I am lying on the operating table, and just before they put me out, I told them that my wife Darlene and I had just finished running a marathon yesterday, and they were all very impressed that I would do this the day before my surgery. This surgery, it was absolutely awful. Dr. Stan Jackson removed a large portion on the side of my right-hand side of my tongue, and when I came to, I couldn't speak, as my tongue had swollen up so much. Not only couldn't I speak for 5 full days, but I couldn't eat or swallow. For the pain medications, I love this. I would actually grind them up in a spoon. Then I would pour the dust back into my throat. I would hold my head back. I would take water, and I had to basically wash it down my throat because I couldn't swallow. You gotta admit, that is awful. During this time that I needed anything, I would write notes to Dar. By the 5th day, she was so sick and tired of getting these notes. She was so happy that by the 5th day, I was able once again to talk. The only good thing that came out of this is that I actually lost 10 full pounds in that week. Not bad. Dr. Stan Jackson and myself got to know each other well over the next few months, as each month I had to come in for checkups. And these checkups, they weren't nice at all. At each appointment, he had this probe. He would put it up your nose, it would go back over and down your throat. The first time I got that done, I gagged and I gagged. I couldn't believe how awful it was. As I was gagging, Stan said to me, "Stop being such a suck. It's not that bad." I replied, "Yes, it is indeed that bad." Now, Darlene, I can't stress this enough. She is a very loving and kind, considerate wife, and she came to every appointment with me. One time, Stan had just finished putting the probe up my nose and going back down my throat. And I said to Stan, "How about checking out Darlene?" Stan said, "Sure." Darlene looked, she looked at us and said, "There is no way that I'm going to do that voluntarily," and she left the room. Loving only goes so far, okay? At my September checkup, we found out the cancer had come back. Stan said he couldn't understand this since he had cut the cancer out below the margins, i.e. way below where the cancer was. In a couple of weeks, I once again went under the knife and I had more of my tongue removed. As Stan was finishing the surgery, this time he cauterized the area that he had cut out. Darlene said that she could actually smell burning flesh in the hallway. I'm glad I didn't have to smell that. This surgery was actually easier to heal from the first one. 3 days after the surgery, I was able to speak normally once again. One thing that I was really worried about was that how it would affect my speech. But thanks be to God, I was much able to speak normally. Well, if you consider the way I'm speaking normal. 6 months after the surgery, Stan tells me that I should consider myself cancer-free, as my tongue looked perfectly normal, except for the part that had been cut out. At that time, I told a jeweler friend of mine that I was now cancer-free. And he said this, "Don't believe that. That's what they said after about 8 weeks after my wife had surgery, and she died only a few months later." Really? What is wrong with these people? Like to say, who needs enemies when you have friends like that? After the second surgery, I got Darlene to take pictures. I actually sent these pictures via email to a lot of my friends. I told them not to look at the pictures if you're squeamish. A number of my doctor and nurse friends, they got back to me, "Oh, Ken, that looks really good." And they liked those pictures. But all sorts of other people wrote back, "Ken, you're sick." Why on earth would I ever want to look at pictures of your surgery? But I wrote back, But I did say to you, if you're screaming, don't look at it. I was going to put up these pictures in this video, but once again, I don't think that's appropriate, and Darlene definitely said, don't do that. Now, fast forward to 2013. Ever since my surgeries, my hygienist and my dentist, at every appointment, they yank up my tongue and take a look at my right side to see, make sure everything is still looking normal. Well, in 2013, the hygienist looked at my tongue and said, Ken, I hate to tell you, but it sure looks like the cancer has come back. Oh, it doesn't look very good at all. The dentist comes in, and after looking at my tongue, he says, Ken, the cancer has definitely come back with a vengeance. I didn't like that word when he said vengeance, but he did. As you can imagine, this news hit me like a ton of bricks. The first thing I did was to call back up Stan. Well, the receptionist, Terry, who remembered me very well, said, well, Ken, you know the rules. If you haven't seen a specialist for over a year, you have to go back and see your GP once again. Immediately after I hung up, I called up Dr. Nash's office. And I said to the receptionist, I said, now look, I like Dr. Nash, but if you could please ask her, I don't want to come in. I want to go directly to the specialist. After a few minutes later, I get a call back from the receptionist and said, Dr. Nash definitely wants to see you. I have to tell you, I wasn't happy about that at all. Well, Dr. Nash looks at my tongue and confirms that the cancer has indeed come back and really looks awful. My appointment with Stan was 2 weeks later. The week before my appointment, Darlene and I had gone out to Whistler, British Columbia, to see our daughter who was getting her master's at Trinity Western. I have to tell you that all week long, all I was thinking about what was going to happen to me. On Monday morning of my appointment, Dar once again came along for support. As I told you earlier, Stan and I had gotten to know each other quite well after all these times that we had gotten together. I loved it. Stan comes out and says, Ken, are you still running? And I said, well, yes, of course I am. Stan smiles and said, you're too old to run. I looked at him and said, screw off, Stan. I am not too old to run. At that point, Stan starts laughing and we are off to his examining room. What happened next, I have to tell you, was absolutely incredible. Well, Stan had in his hand one of these long Q-tips. And as soon as he sees my tongue, his demeanor greatly changed. And he said, Ken, the cancer sure has come back. What he did next, he took this long Q-tip and he just gently touches the cancerous area. As soon as he did that, Stan lurched back and has this total look of amazement on his face. The reason was that this large cancerous area had completely fallen off, and underneath was normal flesh-colored tongue material. Oh! Stan immediately tells me that in all his years of being a surgeon, he had never seen anything like this before. Immediately, I gave glory to God by saying, Stan, before I came in here, I had no faith whatsoever that the outcome was going to be good. All I thought was that, once again, I'm going to have more of my tongue removed, and maybe this time the cancer is going to finally get me. But I said to him, Darlene, the absolute love of my life, she had asked a lot of people in our church to pray for a miracle. And it is obvious that God had indeed performed a miracle. You know, I have told this story to hundreds of people over the years. And so many times, just like now, I get choked up about it. Well, getting back my composure here. Stan agreed that it sure looked like God has done a miracle, as he stressed he had never seen anything like this before. Well, the piece that had come off, he sent off to the laboratory, and it did indeed come back cancerous. Over the next number of months, I had to go for checkups. But today is July 2nd, 2023, and I am totally cancer-free. Praise be to God. I get choked up. Who performed this documented miracle? Sorry about that. So, may the good Lord be with you until we meet again. What a wonderful God we serve.